Hello, everybody. This is your host, Aram Melkoumov, and you're listening to another Product Innovation Show episode, where every week our guests share their stories and wisdom on how to ship a great product. Today, I'm joined with the Director of Product Design at Remix. His name is Filippo Di Trapani. He's our first guest actually on the show who's actually working in the Web3 ecosystem, so very exciting. Just a quick little background on Remix. It's a platform for creatives building the future of digital wearables for the metaverse. And just to tell you a little bit about our guest speaker today, Filippo architected engaging experiences across multiple browsers, platforms, and devices at companies like Shopify, WordPress, which is Automattic, Xiaomi, T-Mobile, Alcatel-Lucent, Iridium, and Canadian Geographic. So lots of different variety of experiences. So really excited to dive into that. So Filippo, thank you for coming on our show, and it's great to have you.
Great, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So the first question I have is Web3. When and why did you decide to go into this new uncharted territory?
Yeah, so I got the current role I'm in earlier this year in March, but I had been kind of interested in what was going on in the Web3 world earlier last year. And so I first of all, when I first heard the term Web3, I was like, what's Web3? And I went to search it, and then I had been like reading things here and there. But yeah, I had a connection to the CEO of Remix, Nazim Ahmed, and him and I would connect every now and then. And he reached out to me again earlier this year to give me a demo of what they were working on. And at the end of the demo, he asked if I wanted to join Remix. And initially in my mind, I was thinking I wouldn't, because I just joined another company that I was working at for just over a year. But as I thought about it more and more, I thought I'd be a fool not to take it on, because the timing was just right. Like if you looked at the market back in March, everything was kind of exploding. I also have 3 young kids, and I see how they're kind of in the digital wearable space. You know, they're playing Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite, and they're constantly bugging me to buy them clothes and stuff like that. And so, you know, if you look away from like how the world is today and you look further out, like this, to me, this is the best time to jump in at the very early stages to kind of be here at the beginning. And my thinking again, it's like once it's more mainstream, I'll already have like time and experience behind me in the space. So it's a very exciting time to be here.
Awesome. And so just maybe for our audience who aren't too familiar with Web3, maybe if you could tell them a little bit what is Web 1, what's Web 2, what's Web 3?
Right.
Just to give a bit of like a background.
Yeah, so whenever you read an article about Web 3, there's usually the same graphic there that's got the Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. And so Web 1 was, again, when the internet first came out, it was mostly just read-only, where you would have static web pages for reading content and information. The next phase of the web that came on is Web 2.0. I don't know if people remember that term, but it's when social media companies started coming about. And in that point, people could read and write to the internet. E-commerce started growing out of it as well. And so the web started becoming more engaging in that way. You can take part of it. But there's also a time where companies were able to like harvest data and advertise to us and developed a lot of things that a lot of people aren't happy with. And so over time, people have been kind of working on a combination of different technologies that make up what is known as the Web3. And the idea with Web3 is to be a more immersive web platform. And so you've got technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality that enable that. And then we've got other technologies like the blockchain and cryptocurrencies that help people kind of transact more easily online. So in terms of sending money, improving ownership and that kind of thing, those are the other pieces of that technology. And so this also with the Web3, the idea is that we're looking to make, as part of the ethos, is to make Web3 users owners of their own content, and to share in the wealth that is the internet. And so again, the old model in Web 2 is you use these products for free, but your data is getting harvested. Other companies are making all the money off that data. and you're just there happily, blissfully, like looking at photos and stuff. In the Web3, this model can change where, in consenting to look at ads, you can get a piece of that, like money of interacting with ads. Or again, when you make a recommendation and a sale gets made, you can trace that recommendation back, and again, you can start kind of earning off the internet and the products you use versus the Web2 way where other people are making the money.
Awesome. That's a great, I think, quick walkthrough of that kind of Web 1 to Web 3. So thank you. Specifically with Web 3, how do you go about approaching creating a new product in this space? Because it's not really well that defined. Right. Like, how do you kind of determine what to create?
Yeah, so in some ways, a lot of it is the same as what we're used to in product management, where you do your research, you're speaking to people, you're trying to validate things early and often. Where things start getting a little different is there's this whole concept of like communities behind Web3 projects, which in some ways is a way to kind of like evangelize people around your product and bring them in and kind of help them kind of validate your ideas and see whether you're onto something or not. And so again, in the Web3 world, it's kind of different that you work with these communities, you share often with them, you engage them, and if you're doing things right, you get the right signals back, you get more people joining, you get people excited about your product, and when you release features or you release products, you've got people buying them, and not only buying them because they're in your community and they're brand evangelists, they're out there selling it and for you, and in some cases they're hopefully like benefiting in that process of selling to you, like, because they can earn as well. And so for Remix as an example, we're creating a community of artists that can use our design tool to make 3D digital wearables for the metaverse. And so we've brought these artists into our community, and we're working with them to develop our product. And so once you design your 3D wearable, we've created a marketplace that they can sell their their clothes to. And so we benefit when they go out and share their creations and sell their creations to their customers, and they benefit because they earn off of the work that they've done. And so it's a win-win for both of us that way.
Interesting. And with your background, you worked at a lot of different companies before going into Web3. What would you say are some of the fundamental differences between Web3 products versus like SaaS, software as a service products? Yeah,
so the community aspect of it is a different approach, and I don't think it's limited to Web3. I've spoken to some colleagues in SaaS businesses, and there's nothing stopping like any company really to create a community where they can engage their customers, and their customers can engage each other, and they can build these ambassadors around them. But beyond that, again, the technology is different in some ways. It's still, let's say, like it's maturing, but it's still early. Some stuff isn't as well developed as it could be. Wallets, for example, are amazing when you don't have to remember a password. You can go to any site and connect your wallet. But then there's downsides to that too, in terms of security and stuff like that. So where it is today, again, is not where it's going to be in like 5 years, but the vision is there, the dream is there, that you only need one password, and you can kind of move around really easily. And so technology wise, there's that setup that you need to work with. There's those constraints that you need to work with that you typically wouldn't necessarily do so in the SaaS world. And then then there's also this idea of interoperability, which again is a beautiful vision where you, as a user on the web, you own your own content and you can take that content anywhere you go. In reality, it's proving to be very difficult from a technical perspective. So when you look at the 3D digital wearable space as an example, we're creating 3D models that in theory you should be able to take and use on any platform or any place. And so how does that look when there's no standards right now? And so it's still early, and so we're coming up with different ways that we, when you download a package, for example, we just provide a bunch of different formats, but there isn't just one universal 3D format that you can use across the board. And so that's one of the other challenges we're kind of working with, and is unique in the Web3 space.
And you mentioned on this in the last answer just now, but it's like $1 billion question. But what would it take for these technologies to get more mainstream, where the idea of a wallet to be accessible, available, towards the common user, from a technology perspective or from like economic perspective or whatnot? Like, what would we need to do in order to finally make this a reality?
I think it's happening in a lot of ways already. There's a lot of more and more people getting into crypto financing, because again they see the financial opportunities of doing so. So people are making that leap. They're going through huge hurdles to get there. I don't know if you've ever bought an NFT or traded in crypto. It's a huge barrier, especially in Canada. You've got to direct deposit your money into some secret account, and then if you're lucky, you get your money afterwards. And so there are hurdles, but people are traversing them. It is like $1 billion industry, over $1 billion industry already. I think in January alone, like over $5 billion or something like that was sold. And so people are slowly making that journey over. But then there are companies too that are trying to bridge the gap. And this is something we saw in our marketplace as well. Again, since there is such a big barrier for people to like get access to like cryptocurrencies and to pay on our platform, we're looking at options with other platforms out there that are kind of bridging the Web 2 and the Web 3 world. And so what this looks like is, they accept credit card payments, but then instead of you having to own your own wallet, they've got like a custodial wallet for the whole application, which will hold on to your assets until you're ready to transfer them out. And so they're yours when you log into your account with an email and password. They have that there too, or you can pick the wallet. They let you move your assets to another wallet if that's what you want to do. So again, back to the interoperable concept. And so there are some companies thinking about how to bridge this world so that it's easier for people to start buying digital assets and retain ownership of them, and then giving them the means to like move on to like a full Web3 kind of wallet or something like that.
Okay. Just to go back in time just for a couple of minutes. I mean, Shopify, you spent some time working at that company, which for many people in the tech world was like some of like the most, they did a lot of innovative things. They pushed like a lot of frontiers in terms of product development. What would you say were some of your biggest learnings that you had during that time there? And what lessons did you learn while at Shopify that, you're still applying or coming back to today in Web3?
Yeah, so I mean, Shopify was definitely an amazing company to work with. The CEO, Toby Luca, is a visionary, and the leadership team at the time that I was there was just excellent. I think they set like a really good framework for people to work in there and to push themselves and to push each other. And so some of the lessons from Shopify, again, was what good leadership looks like, how valuable having good values and that kind of thing is to give people autonomy to kind of work within their craft. But in terms of for me personally, is like working at Shopify, I learned a lot about product management, working around a lot of really smart people in that space. I saw the value of like how to craft a really good case for building a product or a feature, and how you use a combination of qualitative and quantitative data, how you speak to different people to get that point across. There's people that resonate with like emotional arguments and other people that need more rational ones. And so that's where you use the qualitative and the quantitative data. And so those were that was one of the very key parts of my career overall in terms of, again, learning how to like gather the information and do the research I need to do to identify different needs and come up with good ways of solving those problems. One of the other things that I learned at Shopify was just working at scale with lots of people. When I joined, there were 300 of us, and then when I left, there were 2,000, and it was felt like a very quick acceleration as people started coming on board. And so that's helped me a lot in the Web3 space. Again, learning to communicate at scale, reporting upwards, generating reports and that kind of stuff. It's helped me in the Web3 space because, again, with this community, you got these group of people that you're trying to corral around your product. You want them to be excited about it. And so you use the same kind of tactics in terms of reporting and communicating frequently and sharing progress with that community to kind of get them excited about your product and engaged and again, turning them into brand ambassadors. And so that skill has just served me so well from learning it at Shopify, moving to Automattic, which was it's been fully distributed company for over 15 years now. And so learning to kind of communicate at that at Shopify helped me in a remote context, and now in the Web3 space with the community kind of is helping me a lot there as well. And so again, this comes down to one of their values at Shopify was do things, tell people. And so it's something I've held on to since I've left Shopify, and it's served me very well.
Awesome. I really like that. Do things, tell people. It's spot on.
It is.
You mentioned about remote work, so I have a couple of questions there. If I'm not mistaken, you've been working remotely for the last 6 years.
That's right.
That right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you missing the office, or do you like this remote life?
Not at all. I mean, I don't ever like to say never, because you never have full control of your life in a way that you would hope to have. But if it was up to me, I don't think I would go back to the office. I feel like I'm in a very lucky position now that I'm working for Remix, which is a remote company, but it's based out of Ottawa, the city I live in. And so I do get to see my colleagues from time to time. But seeing my wife, she works for the federal government, they're starting to kind of roll out like a return to office policy, and seeing how that's playing out for her, just like, I don't need to sit in traffic and sit around the office chatting with people. Like, it's just too much work to do all the time to be using it up that way. And so I think there are key things that help remote companies be successful. At Automattic, they would bring the team together. They bring teams together on a semi-frequent basis, and then the whole company would come together once a year. I know the pandemic changed that, and the pandemic changed remote work as well. Like what I experienced during the first year of the pandemic was not what I experienced the years before that, where I was home alone working. Like during the pandemic, I had 3 kids running around, climbing on me. And again, thanks to Automattic and the distributed nature there, it was really easy for me to change the way I worked, because we had colleagues working all over the world at different hours. And so I didn't have to subscribe to like the traditional 9 to 5. I could work whenever I needed to.
Whether it's Automattic or some other examples, what have you seen as being like the secret sauce or the secret formula to effective remote leadership and product development?
Yeah, so I think the meeting, like the teams coming together on a somewhat semi-frequent basis is really important, because that's when people form connections with each other. I mean, in our case, again, we would travel to different cities across the world and spend a week together. And so you're eating together, you're working together, you're partying together if you're into that kind of thing. And so then you build really deep relationships with people, and I find that helps work really well together. The other secret to remote work is no big surprise, but like good communication. And so you can't kind of replicate good communications through having lots of meetings and just kind of replicating the in-office experience. I think it's really about embracing asynchronous communication. And if you, again, in terms of hiring, you open up your pool of talent across the globe versus a very narrow geographic location. Like you can bring people from all kinds of backgrounds into your company and offer all those diverse perspectives. So I think that's like a key part. And with that as well, if you can unlock like the 24-hour cycle of work happening, which is tough to like get it going, but when you do, like it's amazing. Like you can set people up with work to do, and you go to sleep, and when you wake up, it's done. Like it's like a magical thing, and then you're almost like picking up the baton and kind of carrying on that work. And so it's really cool if you can kind of get that to work.
And that's just through great asynchronous communication.
That's right.
Whether that's around comms or work.
Yeah, I mean, the communication proliferates in a lot of different ways. I mean, it's not only just how you're speaking to each other; it's how you're defining your projects, how you're defining the scope of work, how frequently you're touching base with people. So again, if somebody goes like quiet for too long, like there's a problem there, and you need to like reach out and connect with people. And so, again, communication is so critical and in so many different forms in terms of making sure that work is happening, that people are happy and things are going and that there's no kind of ambiguity, because that's where the downfall with remote work is when people aren't aligned and they go off and start working on the wrong things or they're spending time on stuff that they shouldn't. Is where it can become ineffective.
Any specific epic fails when it comes to remote product management that you've come across?
Yeah, I mean it goes back to that communication and assuming that everybody's kind of on the same page with you, and so then people will. In a personal kind of story, we had like a timeline we were working towards to deliver a feature, and I thought we were all on the same page in terms of what we were doing and when it needed to be done by. And as the project went on and the time kind of started kind of shrinking on us, I noticed like that we weren't where we needed to be, and it was again because we weren't communicating like the scope of what we needed to get done, and when like people were kind of working on other stuff and picking up pet projects, and it was like, why are you working on that when we need to work on this? And they're like, well, when we like sat down and spoke about it, they didn't know, they didn't see the full picture of the different moving pieces, and they thought that they got the one piece done and that we were good. And so it just came back to communication and making sure that it's very like obviously clear like what it is that we're working towards and that it's easy to access for everybody. And so awesome. it came down to a communication breakdown in the end, the fail.
I think communication, our principle around this is communication,
right.
Just over communicate.
Right.
Kind of everything all the time, especially in the remote world.
That's so big, yeah. And that was a value at Automattic was communication is oxygen. Like you just needed to over communicate. There's never such a thing as too much.
Too much, exactly. I'm gonna ask you just a couple more product management specific questions, and then we'll jump into the fireside format. So, with your background in product management, even today, whether it's Web3 or non-Web3, what do you feel a lot of product directors often still do these days, which don't get them a great product?
Yeah, so
I know it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, it is broad. I don't.
Are there steps being skipped?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to my own experiences and not so much to like what other people are doing. I think, there's always a temptation to move quickly and not do your research, and then just kind of building things that aren't kind of aligned with your customers, or of value to anybody. And so again, skipping research and validation is not something that pays off in the end. Like if you're just cutting corners, like it's going to cost you in the end. And so there's also the sunken cost fallacy where, you believe you're heading down the right direction, and then maybe you learn somewhere along the line that it isn't, but you tell yourself you've got to keep going because you committed all this time into it. And so there are times, as hard as it is, you just got to cut your losses and move on. And in the end, it's always like a better decision for everybody to kind of realize that as soon as possible. And so again, at Automattic, I worked with a really good manager that would often ask us, are we still confident in what we're building? Is this the right thing that we're building? And is there any way we can like cut the scope so we can get it out and learn quicker from our audience? And so again, that's another challenge, is like just building too much and before getting like validation from your customers. And so again, sinking too much time behind the scenes versus kind of getting stuff out early. And so that's another thing in the Web3 world that we've kind of embraced on our end, is getting stuff out a lot earlier, and maybe in states that we're not like 100% comfortable with, but it's always paid off to get something out to an audience and get their input versus keeping it inside and just building that extra feature or adding that extra polish. In the end of the day, that stuff matters, but at the same time, I think it matters more to like get things out in front of people. And so we've had a number of moments, even on the marketing side, where we're like, is it too early to share this thing? And it's never too early, because then again, you get the signals of like, are you on track? Are you doing the right thing? And should you keep moving forward with this, or is it time to do something else?
And what aspects of product development would you say money can't fix?
I think making good decisions is something. I mean, you can't put more people on that. And so again, you've got to do your research. You've got to be speaking to people regularly. You got to be getting stuff out to your audience again to make sure you're doing the right thing. And so again, that's not anything money can buy for you. It's just it's thinking strategically. It's thinking again, like working with your audience in mind and building things for them versus building for yourself. And again, it's not a matter of like putting more people on that kind of thing. You just got to take the time to go through the process every time and to get things right.
Awesome. Last question before we jump into the fireside. What are things you wish people would ask you more often?
That's a good question. I think I like to push myself, and I'm hard on myself that way. And so I wish people would push me in that same way as well, to ask like, is it good enough? Can we do better? And I always take that as a personal challenge. And a lot of times you can, if you just kind of put your head down and put the extra time in to do something. And so recently, somebody did kind of ask me that question, and it made me feel good that they did. And I went back to the drawing board with something, and the solution in the end came out to be better and more elegant and simpler to implement than what I had originally proposed. And so again, especially as you go on in your career, people kind of just agree with you more. They see you as like a thought leader in the company. And so being challenged, I think is both a good sign of respect, that they think you can handle like the truth or the pushback. And I think it's best in everybody's interest to be asking each other those kind of questions.
Keep challenging each other.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. Ready for the fireside format?
Let's do it.
The format is ask a question, try to answer it in as few words as possible.
Sure.
So the first one is, how do you ask better questions in product?
You got to listen better, learn to listen, and talk to more people.
Okay. And what have you become better saying no to over the years?
The eternal optimist in me makes it really hard to say no, but I have come to find like something that never works out is the silver bullet, like feature request to say, if we do this one thing, it's going to 10x everything. And I've never seen it come to life. And so usually those kind of things look like distractions to me more than real solutions to real problems.
Okay. If you only had the opportunity to work, say, 5 hours per week, what would you do in those 5 hours in terms of focus?
Yeah. So do you mean like within the space that I'm working now, or if it could just be anything I could do in
Yeah.
Well, if it was anything, I would. I just want to work on creative work, and so whether it's doing more design work or even like front end development, I like building, and so if I could do a lot of that, that's what makes my heart happy.
Okay, awesome. Are there any controversial views you hold in product?
Yeah, I think we're all designers in some way. And so I know some designers will look at that and say no, but I just think some of us are more practiced than others. I think design, like art, is a process, and it's teachable and repeatable. And so if you sit down and do the work, you put the time in. Some people might get to the end result a lot quicker because they're talented, but I think everybody, as long as you exercise those muscles, can be a designer or an artist.
Would you say, sorry, this is not one of the questions, but would you say design is an objective thing?
It is. Like, art is more subjective, but art design and product development is more objective. Again, we have ways to measure the effectiveness of it, and so there are subjective elements to it, but for the most part, again, you can measure how effective something is, which in my mind makes it more objective.
I 100% agree. I just wanted to confirm with you. All right. What is one or two of the most worthwhile personal investments you've made to date in your career?
So I think the best thing I found in my career is creating space to play and experiment and explore. So working on side projects, as an example, is the way I've learned a lot of the stuff that have made me who I am today. Like, as an example, before I joined Automattic, I took on a side project. I wanted to build a mobile app. And so I picked up React Native as a way to build cross-platform apps. And then it just so happened when I joined Automattic, they did everything with React. And so investing that time to learn to code and to use React paid off dividends to me. And it happened multiple times after I've just, outside of work, having like the time to work on another problem. You learn really great skills and like time management and marketing and things that you wouldn't necessarily encounter in the confines of your day-to-day job.
Interesting. Any books that you've read recently or in the past that really influenced your life?
Yeah, so I didn't mention this, but I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I moved to Canada over 20 years ago. But The Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela was one of the best books I've read in my life. It's really like resonated with me in a lot of ways, and really opened my eyes to a lot of things. But other influential books that I've read over time is The Linchpin by Seth Godin. I think that was like a catalyst for me to kind of change the way I operated at work, and it's paid off in a lot of ways. And then The Lean Startup was again, my introduction to the product world and this whole concept of validating ideas and talking to customers earlier. I mean, at the time I read that, I was already kind of in the interaction design and UX world. And I was, for the most part, leaning very heavily on quantitative data. And so that kind of opened my mind to doing like more qualitative stuff. And then again, thinking about minimum viable products and all those kind of ideas.
Okay. All right, great. Filippo, anything you want to share with the audience as like a takeaway when it comes to product management before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just share again, the Web3 space is very exciting time and exciting place to be in. It's literally feels like we're working on the future. And so I would encourage people to kind of look into it, because there's a lot of concepts and ideas there that you don't necessarily need the technology to make those kind of ideas come to life, and you can build like a better product out of it. And again, I keep coming back to the community aspect of things, where you look to create more value for your community, and then they repay that back to you tenfold. And so again, that's not something you need Discord to do, which is the preferred like tool for administering communities. And again, I hope that's one of these things that we look at as a today thing and not a future thing, because Discord can be hard for people to get into, but you don't need those tools. Like, you can build a community any way you want, and not rely on Web3 technologies for that. So it's a good place to look at for inspiration. There's definitely a lot of creativity happening in this space. So there's just a lot of really cool, exciting stuff here for everybody to kind of poke their heads up and take a look at what's going on.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. It's a really fast-paced ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So, Filippo, thank you so much. It was awesome having you. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. And to all the listeners, always thanks for tuning in, supporting the show, and stay tuned for the next episode.